All right, thanking God for the ability to be happy. Let's just call John chapter 21 happy, understanding that in times past I have talked about the way that life can take us through some times that can make us feel we were just born to lose sometimes. But chapters like this remind me that we were not born to lose. And sometimes a chapter just makes me happy. And that's what this one did. It's not a super complicated title, but in this chapter that begins in the first three verses, talking about the third appearance that Jesus is going to make to his apostles. We are going to see Simon Peter with a number of others basically stating that as they're waiting, he's going to try to do something productive. He's going to go fishing. And Simon with Thomas, Nathaniel, the two sons of Zebedee, and two others, I think if I haven't missed any, I think that's roughly seven, are going to decide to go out fishing. But as life would have it, there are times when we've also talked about that Murphy's Law thing seems to be way too much a part of our reality. And so as they are trying to take their minds off of their current condition, absent the Christ, even though he's making appearances here and there, they're going to go fishing and they are not going to catch anything all night. However, in verses 4 through 8, as day is breaking and it seems that they are approaching shore from the shore, Jesus is going to address them, even though they are not literally going to be able to recognize him as Jesus. They are going to take his counsel to cast out by the right side of the boat, at which point he says, you might find something. My paraphrase, of course, but they cast out to the right side of the boat, and not only do they catch something, they catch a large catch of fish, so large that they're having trouble getting the nets back in, at which point John, I believe one of the sons of Zebedee, is going to recognize it's the Lord, at which point Peter is going to dress himself, understanding that he was, pared down for work. He's going to get his garments right, get into the water, and swim ashore. At which point, verses 9 through 14 are going to show Jesus, telling them to bring some of the fish, 153 large fish that they caught for breakfast. They are not going to question whether or not it is the Lord, making it seem that they still don't visually recognize him as the Lord, but they're not going to question a thing. They're just going to know. And as he tells them to bring some of the fish, they're going to have bread and fish, marking the third time. It's literally going to say that he appeared to his disciples, notwithstanding the time that he appeared to Mary at the empty tomb. With that, though, after breakfast, verses 15 through 19 are going to show Jesus questioning Peter, asking him first, do you love me more than these? After questioning him and his love three times, Peter is going to be upset, quite possibly, because he may have in the back of his mind the fact that he has betrayed Jesus, and this questioning might make him think that he might not be completely forgiven. That's all my guesstimation. But Jesus, interestingly enough, after each question, he's going to have a slightly different response. After the first question, whether or not he loves, or whether Peter loves him more than these, he's going to answer, or as Peter answers that he loves the Lord is going to respond, feed my lambs. And again, after he has asked Peter whether or not he loves him, and Peter responds, yes, he loves him, he's going to say, tend my sheep. And then after the third time, when he has asked Peter whether or not he loves him, and Peter affirms that he loves God and loves the Christ is going to say, feed my sheep, in a progression that says, feed my lambs, of course, the young ones, tend or look after the needs of my sheep, the more mature, and then likewise, feed the sheep, the more mature ones. As he's going to conclude, Christ is going to conclude this interaction with Peter by giving Peter a subtle prophecy about the kind of death by which he will glorify God, concluding by saying, follow me, understanding quite possibly that Christ, having endured his own cross, has shown Peter the way to endure whatever is ahead, even his own death. But as they are being followed by the disciple that we will later learn, I think, is John, the author of this gospel, Peter is going to turn his attention to the one following him and say, what about him? At which point, my paraphrase, Christ is going to be like, what about him? And essentially say, if I want him to live until I return, what is that to you? As he's going to repeat, you follow me. Leading to the saying being spread amongst the brethren that apostle was not going to die, or that one was not going to die until Christ returned, even though it's literally going to say Christ did not say that he would not die and that he would live until Christ returned. He simply said, what is that to Peter, if that is what the Christ chose for that disciple? Understanding that, the logical point that might have most caught my attention was the way in which we need each other. Understanding that even though Peter might have been a little bit curious about what was going to happen with John in the days ahead, even while Jesus might have made it clear to him that he was low-key prophesying Peter's own death and how it was going to end for him, the realization that I came to when they were on the boat and they still weren't certain who they were talking to on the shore is that as John seemed to be the first to recognize that it was the Christ, Peter once again took the initiative to go and confirm it, much like at the tomb when they ran after Mary had told them that the tomb was empty. Peter got outrun to the tomb, but he took the initiative to go into the tomb. And so even though at his lowest, he might have felt super low, understanding that one of the Gospels talks about the way that he wept bitterly when he betrayed the Christ, he was not defined by that moment of betrayal. He was more defined by the way in which he took the initiative, even if he wasn't always the quickest to get it or to have insight into what was going on. And so the two of them together, John and Peter, seemed to embody that principle that we need each other. Sometimes the insight of one can help fuel the initiative of another. And together we accomplish things that, sounds cheesy, but it's true, we could never get done apart. That's the logical part. But none of that matters if the Christ doesn't come through in a time when they might be doubling down on their low moments. Not necessarily knowing the next time they'll see him again. They try to do something positive and it all turns to nothing as they spend all night fishing, quite possibly distressed. But the thing that, once again, as we started out, the thing that makes me happy is the way that even though Christ lets us go through difficult times, sometimes he just shows up when we least expect it to intervene in our circumstances, sometimes in just small ways that can make us happy. But like the disciples here with the catch of 153 large fish that came after a disappointing night, sometimes he comes through in big ways that can restore our happiness when we least expect it.